Hello and welcome into today's video. I want to thank you so much for joining in, and I want to tell you that I have such great plans again for 2025, and I can barely contain myself with my videos, so thank you so much for subscribing and sharing me out. The view counts and the numbers are way up, so I'm going to continue to do exactly what I'm doing. You know me as a jewelry historian, a silversmith, a person that does lectures. I used to do estate sales every weekend for 16 years. I also am an avid collector, and I've been doing it for over 30 years now. And I looked back at my early collections, and I couldn't believe some of the things that I have found. I will stop at nothing for my collections, specifically in jewelry, but you have to remember, I collect decorative arts, oil paintings, bronzes, antique lamps and lighting, mid-century modern, art pottery, art glass. The list rolls on. But why I brought this one on today is I had taken this to the presentation I did for the Summit County Lapidary Society. And in the video, I didn't get a chance to go close up on this. And before it goes back into safety deposit for safekeeping, I wanted to show you this very quickly today and give you a little bit of background information. Again, thanks so much for joining in. As soon as I saw this box in the dealer showcase, this was a show at Burton, Ohio, at the Burton, Ohio Fairgrounds. And many people that are local in Ohio know of the Burton County show. It's twice a year, and I had done the show and shopped the show since I believe I was 15, and I'm 50 this year. So, because I asked my mom, I said, didn't we go before I could drive? And she said, yeah, I think for 2 years before you could drive. And I always had such a good time at the show. This is a leather-covered box, and as soon as I saw this, I instantly said, oh, that's Victorian. And it's old, early Victorian, not mid or late Victorian. When I opened this, the dealer was just getting set up, and it just simply took my breath away. I noticed the price tag was $1,150 and listed as gold filled. So I had said to the dealer, who's a friend of mine, I said, did you test the metal? And he said, no, it's clearly gold filled. And I think he sold it to me for $800. I think that's what we decided on. I think I paid $800 for this. And honestly, I couldn't get the $800 out fast enough. I will say that I was very distracted that morning specifically because I was setting up at the show with my friend Mike, and I was a vendor there and a dealer there. So I was a little distracted with thinking, oh, I've got all that stuff over in my booth, and here I am running around trying to shop and buy things. I also noticed the inside of this case, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. Please stay tuned for this video because there's a lot of important information in this. As soon as I saw her face, I instantly had a connection with her. Can't exactly explain my connection, but could just tell you that her eyes were filled with life. Her lips almost told me that secret or that message that she had. For someone who has passed on that long ago, her youthfulness and her beauty will live on forever in this portrait miniature. Almost photographic quality, that kind of bluish cast to the skin, the rosy pink of her cheeks. A lot of times when we see portrait miniatures this early, they don't get this detailed. I will say another thing I've learned over the last few months about this. I initially thought that that was a painting on ivory because I did see some almost graining in the surface here. I knew that it wasn't celluloid. I knew it wasn't French celluloid, but under further magnification, it almost looks like she might be on vellum. So I'm not exactly sure now on vellum or ivory. So I'm not exactly sure on that. And as a historian, I always say, have the courage to correct yourself when you make a mistake. I do every day of my life. So now I'm convinced that it's either vellum or ivory, and I'm almost leaning towards vellum because of that almost stippled surface on the surface of that material. It is a very thin sheet. It's a very thin material. And I will tell you, the painting is watercolor and gouache, but look at the eyes. Look at the realism of that expression and her little smirk, her little pursed lips, her hairstyle. the background, and then, of course, this low-fitting diaphanous blouse that she's wearing. Incredible detail, incredible design, and again, when you think of portrait miniatures, kind of documenting a person who has passed, and keeping that person alive for generations to come. Let's look at the construction of the bracelet. Notice how that's heavily oxidized and almost appears to be brass. As soon as I saw the solder seams, and I go into this in every video, I get close up to show you rather than lecture you or tell you. Look at that solder seam here. Also, look at the solder seams underneath. Let's open this up and take some close looks at what I talk about with these solder joints. Lots of solder joints all over this container. Down in here is another solder eutectic where the metal joins. Let's look at the seams here. Not a lot of discoloration, a little bit of oxidation here, which is normal for gold. See how that's become a more brass tone. See how that's become a little bit more mellow in its presentation, because gold does oxidize. Gold does tarnish because of the materials that it is alloyed with. So we've covered that so many times, but I feel it very important. Yes, before you ask, it is missing 2 of the applied leaf or rosettes on the sides. Look at the depth of those links and also that hand-chased engraving so carefully put on. I will say this much. I instantly knew that this was someone very important and a person of wealth because of the size and the scale of this. Normally, these are half the size or even 1/3 the size. Look how large that is for a portrait miniature underneath glass. Absolutely breathtaking beauty that has been documented so long ago. Let's talk about the construction of the gold. And so when I came home, I showed this to my friend Jason, who is very, very smart. And I asked him, am I completely nuts, or does this look like solid 14 karat gold? So he did a small test for me, and it came back conclusive that this is solid 14 karat yellow gold. Solid 14 karat yellow gold. I wasn't going to talk about the gold value just yet, but let's cover that. I marked this down. So when Jason was here, he carefully removed this top. I don't suggest doing this, but he carefully removed this top fitter ring and took out this compartment, just this top portion. So the rest is solid gold. He weighed this and it was 45.1 grams. 45.1 grams. Based on today's gold value of approximately $2,654, just the gold in this bracelet today is worth $2,245. That's approximate. So $2,245, I paid $900 for this. So instantaneously, that's a profit of $1,345. $1,345. I will never let this get melted down. I will protect this for the rest of my time, and I will make sure that this never gets melted down in our history. So I would say if you were to go to an antique show, high end, one of the national shows, I would say a dealer would have this out between $3,000, between $3,000 and $4,200. Could they ask more because of the box? Absolutely yes. Would I find it to be unusual that it would sell for that much? The answer is no, because of the size of this. On the back of it, and that's just talking value, so now that's done. Let me move that sheet over because I did have to write that down. When I looked on the inside, the name of the sitter for the portrait is right here. And I don't know why it won't focus. There we go. It's J and then a period. Let me look here because I didn't write this down either. This is, it says J period, A period, and then Chauncey, Chauncy. So J period A period Chauncey. That is the person's name that is the sitter for this brooch. So there it is, J period A period and then Chauncey in very fancy script. When I looked at that style of writing, I knew that this was early Victorian. Absolutely the style of the writing. Let's discuss her just a little bit more, and then I'll kind of say, as like a jewelry historian, how we do these things and how we kind of what do I say? How we date such pieces. So let's look at this. Hairstyle. Hairstyle is very, very classic, right at 1850. The 1850 hairstyle normally completely covers the ear. Just a very small portion of her ear is exposed. If her full ear was exposed, that would date it to 1855 to 1865. So I'm going to circa date this to around 1850. However, let's look at the low-fitted blouse. That is unusual for 1850. And the reason for that is that's more 1819 to 1835. And we know that because of documented fashion of the times. So hairstyle, circa 1850, that low fitted top and a lot of exposed neck and bust line, that is of an earlier time period, 1819 to approximately 35. By 1850, that was much more close up and tight around the neck with a fitted collar. So I know that this young girl was, shall I say, maybe slightly ahead of her time. I guess we could say that. Look at the gaze in her eyes. Every time I look at that face, I can't help but smile. There's just something there that I wish she could tell me what her life was about. I wish she could tell me her story. She's got secrets for sure. Absolutely amazing. There is a famous picture of Susan B. Anthony. I think it's known to be 1850, and it's the center parted hair that's tied back and then have kind of rolled under or flipped under, tucked under, and you can see that is kind of tucked under that part line where that comes down. Very much so 1850, absolutely. But, 1855, 1865, the full ear would have been exposed. Amazing that you can, get so close to a date on a portrait miniature. Absolutely incredible. Now let's set her down for just a second. And you can tell that she has been in this fitted box her whole entire life. This was made for this to fit in here. So when we look at these boxes, it was made to fit in. That's been in there ever since life started. It's a fitted box specifically for this bracelet to hold that down in. And what a gorgeous presentation. Always be careful that the chains and the safety chains do not get caught underneath here. So if you put them back in, just make sure the chain is there. And then when you go to close the box, make sure the chain is tucked in here so that you don't close that chain into this hinge. See if that folds over. Just a small recommendation, not telling anyone what to do, but just be careful with such things and then close it once you tuck the chain in. All right, so when we look at the way that's fitted in the box, let's talk about, oops, it does sit down. Oh, I think what happened was, yeah, that chain is definitely kind of holding it up. Let's see here. See how that fits so snug down in, and it just sits right there on top of that. It's, I just go nuts that it had its box nonetheless, but it shows that this item was so revered. Let's talk about the inside of the box. So on the silk, manufacturing upon the premises, David Rate Goldsmith, and then the address of Broadway, upstairs, New York. Look at that English style belt with the clasp and then the drop border. Very, very cool. And you could see that this top edge would ride the top of this box. So you can see that bracelet has been in here. A lot of times what we'll see with jewelry is pieces will be, quote, married back together. So if you have a brooch that, let's say, is Edwardian, 1915, you can find a 1915 box and marry the two together. Infrequently do you find the fitted box that has the original piece. That is just a rare survivor in itself, but it shows that this was so revered, and it shows that this was incredibly special to the surviving family members. So there's David Rate Goldsmith. Now, I did a little bit of research early on, and I didn't confirm any of this information online because I don't do it that way. But David Rate was known as a Glasgow silversmith, and I believe his date was around 1832. He was making before that, and I think he registered his mark circa 1822. Going on memory again. So 1822 was when he registered some of his marks. But here's the interesting part. He wasn't producing in New York. So you might say, well, you said David Rate was a silversmith in Glasgow. Well, he was, and it's known. He created commissions, we have to remember this, for nobility and dignitaries of the time and of the location. So then I asked myself, well, why is David Rate's name on this as a goldsmith when he was a silversmith? So there's a little bit of contradiction here. And here's where it gets interesting. His brother David was younger. I'm sorry. Let me back up. David had a younger brother who was known as Robert. Robert was also an accomplished silversmith. But and he apprenticed, Robert apprenticed under James Muir in 1818. That's, again, you can confirm these dates online, but 1818 was when I remembered the date to be. Robert immigrated, so the brother of David immigrated to the United States in approximately 1833. And I think that he was a jeweler retailer, and still a silversmith in New York City from 1833 to 1866. So now I have to wonder, was this produced across seas and then brought into the States and then put into this box in the United States? So did this start life somewhere else and travel to the States? That's why I always bring up the proof of we had foreign silversmiths and goldsmiths and jewelers that immigrated to the United States and then produced stateside in not only their materials, but also their design aesthetics and how they were trained in a foreign country. So that's why I always say, please be careful on origin on pieces. Also, this is proof of please be careful on time periods. I know I tripped over, David and Robert there for a second, but again, I'm just pulling this from my mind of what I remember. And you have to also remember that I did this full time for a long time in my life. I've done this for decades now, and I had to do this on a daily basis at the auction facilities. So this kind of comes natural to me. It's almost like when people have mentioned, the road show and the experts on the road show. I feel about the word experts, and I haven't gotten into the way I feel about the word roadshow either. But we'll get there eventually this year. So as I look at this beauty, I know that, circa dating this, it would be circa dated at 1850. And that would be the circa dating on this. And I was very happy and very proud of myself to take a step back and study the material that this was painted on. Because, of course, it still has the growth lines of ivory, but that pixelated surface, definitely more reminiscent of vellum or, an early vellum. So I would say, and an artist who painted these portrait miniatures only had what was on their desk at their disposal. That's what they had. They just had those raw materials that they had at their fingertips. So what I loved about this was the realism of that. And so many people had watched my presentation for the lapidary group, and I had brought this there, and I just didn't get a chance to show it to the camera. And everybody has courageously asked and graciously asked, can you please bring her back for a close-up? I most certainly can. If there's ever something in my videos that you want to see closer up, so you can see the construction, you want me to take the deeper dive on some things, I'm more than willing to do so. So I will retire her back into her box, and I hope this video brought you some sense of joy and maybe a little bit of additional information. And even when you go to an antique show, you can still make money and make something survive that deserves it. You know, let this item live on for another, let's say 200 or 300 years. I thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you for all the lovely comments. I will promise you I'm going to do my best for you in 2025 and beyond. I don't think I have anything else that I wanted to talk about. I think I covered everything. And wow, I stayed on task and I didn't go crazy. I stayed very focused today. So I thank you all so much for joining in. I hope you go forward with peace and kindness today. Tell someone that you love them. When you're angry or bitter or resentful, don't take it out on somebody else. Go swing on a swing set. Go for a walk in the park. Go to an animal shelter and pet a dog on the head. Or just tell your neighbor, even if you've had a disagreement, tell them you love them, tear down the barriers and tell them that you love them. Love you so much. Have a great day. And I end it every single time. I love you because I do.